Hello again everybody, Jason, the Kentucky Fried Ham. Today I'm going to start assembling my QMX Plus kit that I got for Christmas. So I built a QMX in the past. It was really fun, but if you are familiar at all, you know there's actually three different versions, the low band, mid band, and high band. And while they're tiny, I really like the idea of having the QMX Plus, which is only slightly larger and has all bands from 160 to I think 6, maybe just 10, but I think 6. So I'm going to start assembling this today, and I've already opened the box and I've already broken some of the rules in the instructions. So the instructions say don't tear this open, to cut it open, because you could damage some of the components on the board, which is kind of ironic because the original QMX that I built, I didn't tear open. It doesn't come in a package like that, or it didn't when I got it, and it had components that had been knocked off the board in shipping, which was kind of frustrating, but thankfully everything looks good here. So I'm going to go ahead and move along and assume I didn't damage anything. I don't see any parts, nothing feels loose. I actually don't see any big electrolytics on this, which there were on the QMX. That was what was damaged on my QMX kit, but I'm going to gently put this back in here. I'm going to keep the box because I will need this, but just to kind of show you what we have. So, of course, the PCB, I bought a power cable. Also bought the internal GPS module, which will help keep the time synced if I want to do any of the digital modes. And I also have the full case. I bought my QMX with the intention of designing a case and just really never got around to it. So I ended up actually just using the case for my QCX, which I don't use anymore since I got the QMX. So I'm going to set this stuff a little bit out of the way. And the first step, of course, is going to be go through and look at all the parts and make sure we have all the right components. So to do that, I actually printed some little parts trays. I found these on Thingiverse. I'll try to put a link below. They're pretty cool. They're one wall thick, so they use almost no material. They're not really strong, but they don't need to be for what I'm doing. And they actually have little lids you can print too, because I know I'm not going to finish this in one day. So that will keep me from losing parts when I drop these, which I inevitably will. So I'm going to get some of the other stuff. Some other stuff I've printed here to help the build. You may have seen this in my previous videos. This is my version of the stick vise, which you can buy for about 40 bucks, but they also want people to hack them, so they provide some of the details on their webpage. So I just printed up the jaws and stuff to save myself some money. It's about probably 6 or 8 bucks worth of metal parts from the local hardware store. And then one of the problems when you use the stick vise that you have is holding components to the board when you're soldering. So some people will bend the leads, some people will use tape. But Stick Vise sells little things like this, which are like $17. So I found this model in Thingiverse. I printed this up in PETG, so it'll be a little bit flexible, hopefully a little heat resistant. And then I put a little heat shrink on the end just to hopefully help it along a little bit. But basically you put this under the board with the component, and it's got some tension so it holds it where you want it to be. So that'll be fun to try and see how well that works. But for now I'm going to set those aside. And I'm going to get my little trays. I don't know if I have enough of these. I'm not really sure how many I'm going to need, but let's get this other stuff out of the way here. And I'm going to bring up the assembly instructions. And Hans actually has a nice photographic parts list in this one, which makes it easier than going through the table view. So I'm going to bring that up here, and so let's see what we got here. We have another PCB. This is the LCD board, so I'm going to set him aside over there. Have another PCB, which looks like the LCD carrier and control board. Got some spots for the potentiometers there. And then we have a couple of bags. Oh, there's another board here. I'm not sure what this is. Let's see. This looks like audio jacks maybe. So this is maybe the key jack and key and audio or something. I'm not really sure. We'll see. But I'm going to just put these little PCBs in one of my little trays here. This one's going to be too big. Alright, so let's look at our toroids first, because those will be easy to knock out here. Actually, it looks like all of our caps are in here too, and that's the first thing on the list, so let's go through that. Alright, so we have two FT3743s. We have one T50-2, which has got to be that guy. We have 5 T37-6s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 T37-17s. That's the blue ones. 2, 3. I've never seen that color before. It's kind of a teal color. So what is that? A mixed 17. I'm not familiar with that. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 T37s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's all those guys. And what else do we got? 2 binocular cores here. So there's our 2 binocular cores. So all of our toroids seem to be in order. I'm going to keep that bag just in case. Alright, so we have 2 hanks of enameled wire here, which doesn't show up on the parts list, but that's okay. I'm going to put this big stuff in a different bin here. Alright, so now the capacitors. So 68J. And it is, thank goodness. Alright, I wish I had a way to mark these off, but unfortunately I don't have a printer. So this one says 33K, which is not on the list. This is a 430. Just have one. Three, 3, 1. We should have also, oh yeah, there it is. One of those. 300. 300. So one of those. And this is our 33K, which I don't have on the markings anywhere. Looks like we have all of our caps. Well, let's go back to our picture parts list here. These pictures are nicer. Alright, so we should have 8 inductors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We should have 12 diodes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12. Okay, 4 output transistors, BS170s, pretty sure that's what all these are going to be. Let's see. BS170. 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 Okay, so we got all those. Should have one microphone, which we do. 8 nuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 spacers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 20mm screws. A power connector, 2.1mm power connector, right here. Four stereo jacks. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2x3 90-degree connector is right there. 2x3 female socket right there. 2 2x4 males. These right angle, yes. So there's these two. And then 2 pieces of 2x4 males, so there's those. We already got our hex spacers, our screws, coin battery holder. 1 male header, should be 16 pins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 10mm screw nut and washer. 2 knobs. 2 switches. 2 rotary encoders. Here's 1, 2. 2 button caps. BNC connector and a 22K trim pot. Alright. So that looks like everything. So we got all of our parts. So let's get this guy out. I apologize if it gets a little noisy. I'm going to turn on my fume extractor. I'll bring my stick vise in. I might actually end up using, I have some little PCB feet that I printed too. I don't want to damage the USB jack, which is pre-soldered on here. I think I can offset it like that as long as I remember. So, so the diagram here shows the board with all of the rear panel jacks oriented to the right, and then there's a number C514, for instance, which indicates the number of the capacitor, the reference designator on the actual board itself, and then 122, which will be the value of the capacitor. So I think, let's see, I might just start with some of these singles and see what we have here. So, alright, well, I don't know what you missed because my camera quit recording, but let's see. So here's an 821. The through-hole label 821 is going to be C523. Ah, okay. So one thing too, you want to keep all of the leads on these capacitors because you will need them for other steps. So one thing I like to do too is face these capacitors or any components with markings so that they're all facing the same direction, so that the words, or the writing rather, is the same direction, which makes it easier if you're troubleshooting. So C523 is an 821, and it goes right here. So I'm going to face the writing towards the front of the board, I think. Okay. Yeah, I may end up using, like I said, my little PCB feet that I printed instead of the vise, just because that USB jack is kind of precarious. So let's get one of my little feet here, my little part holder. The stick vise jaws that I have are just a little bit too tall. So these are just another little tool that I printed up. Dugbo KD7DUG wanted me to make some for him, so he sent me the dimensions, and I made them, or maybe I wanted them and he just gave me the dimensions. I can't remember, but anyway, he gave me the dimensions for these, and so I printed them up for him. And so basically they just slide over the edge of the board and you screw them down. Of course, you have to make sure there's no components in the way of where you're going to tighten these down. Nothing here, so let's go ahead and loosen this guy up. So the nice thing about these over the stick vise is both sides are a little bit elevated. Alright, so let's look at this again. So see, this was an 821. An 821 to C523, which is right below the two jumper pins there. So I'm going to flip this guy over. I'm going to put my part holder under there. Now another little tool that I've printed you might have seen is the solder scroll. I love this little thing because it gives you a little bit more control over. Oh, I need to change up to a smaller tip on here. So one thing I like to do too, I have to raise my camera up here a little bit, but is to check our solder connections. So you can see there's a nice shiny joint, and there's like a little pyramid shape. If it's flat or sunken in, you don't have enough solder, and if it's dull, it's going to be a cold solder joint. So those look good. So I'm just going to clip these bad boys off here and put them in their own little bin. Alright, one down. So let's grab us another one here. Here we have a 271. 271 is going to be C440. Which is over here on the left-hand side. So there's a bank of capacitors here. And it's going to be the second one in sequence. Actually, it's pretty helpful. I don't know if you can see in the diagram here, but there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's also screen printed on the board. So right below our L401, we have a stack of capacitors. Our 271 is going to be number 1 here on the board. And if you've watched any of my other builds or any build video on YouTube, you've probably seen proper soldering technique. You want to heat the pad and the part at the same time, the lead and the pad on the board, and you want to bring the solder in from the other side. You don't want to touch the solder to the tip of the iron. You want it so that the heat actually pulls the solder into the joint. And you can actually see it happen if you're watching. Alright. So let's check out that. Whoa, he's way too tall. I guess my little part holder must have slipped. Alright, so there's the capacitors done. Some of those I wish they were a little flatter, but I'm not going to fret it too much. Alright, so we got the capacitors done. That's step number 1. Let's see, step number 2 is the diodes. I think I'm going to give it a rest for a moment and come back to that later. So I will be back in to do step 2 later.